And we're live. So sorry about the delay, everybody. There's a bit of a technical difficulty with my guest in that he's old and fell asleep. So it happens to the best of us. I guess as you get older, you got to get that nap in a little early, and he didn't. So he'll be joining us in a minute. My good friend John Alvarez. It's not a problem at all. You know, it's facts of life. What are you going to do? You got to roll with it. Tonight, I want to talk about a movie that, well, let me put it this way. When I first started doing this show about 6 months ago, I got involved in a lot of, hold on a second. I think he might be with us. Hold on. Hey, man.
My deepest apologies to all the fans out there.
That's quite all right. In internet land, I see you got your coffee. It's all good. So I was just saying that when I got started with this about 6 months ago, there's things that go around from time to time called tags. And tags are where, hey, you know, I made this video. In this sense, it's about videos in this format, where I'm going to list the top 10 of this or the top 10 of something else. And I've seen quite a few of the top 10 Stephen King stories. Mm-hmm. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, it's going to mention all the favorites like The Shining or whatever. But a lot of times what ends up happening, it gets to like The Mist and maybe The Shawshank Redemption, and then maybe people mention movies that I'm not particularly a fan of, like The Lawnmower Man, which I thought was a fantastic short story. I covered it here on the podcast, but I hated the movie. It had absolutely nothing to do with what I thought was a fantastic short story. So what ends up happening all the time, though, and all the tags that I've seen is that I've never seen anyone address the movie we're about to talk about, which is The Dead Zone. It never makes it into the top 10 list. And I think it's a criminally and like I said in my description, I think it's a criminally underrated film. But I also think that it's that way for a particular reason. But if you're ready, I guess we can get into it.
Let's go. Absolutely.
Right.
Let's rock and roll with it.
And we're back. So Eric's already here, and he says, can't wait for tonight, man. Both a forgotten movie and book. It's a favorite of mine in both types of media. I couldn't agree more. And then we've got Mr. Dan and horror, and he says, the ice is going to break. It's going to break. The ice. I wish I had a walking stick to smash something.
Wait, you want to borrow my cane? Wait.
Yeah, you know, don't break anything. Don't break anything. We don't need to go that far.
Ice is gonna break.
Let's not get into method.
You know my brother Paul, Mike.
Yeah.
I know. You know my brother Paul. For years, he had that quote on his answering machine. Back in the days when we had answering machines.
I seem to remember that.
The ice is gonna break, and then Paul would go, all right, I got to talk this guy back for the legs. Just leave a message, which I thought was great. But it's I agree with you completely about the underratedness of this story. Well, I read the book when I was 15, and I loved it. Fell in love with it and thought it was fantastic. What kills it is the TV show.
Which I never saw, and I could live without it. So, I have no interest.
I won't bring it up, but that's. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm not going to watch it. I'm not, planning to watch it. And yeah, they could just stay there. So Eric says people always forgetting this is a Cronenberg film due to there are not any body horror in it. And Dan likes your impersonation. So thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
What we have, I think we got a little feedback here on your end. I think.
Okay, how about this? Is that better?
Yeah, that is better.
Am I getting a little better? Yeah, okay. I think my volume was up a little bit too loud. Also, I'm very excited about it. You and I were talking about this before we even got to do this. We were talking about this movie. When you first started this, I was saying this is something we should cover because it is very underrated.
Yeah.
And it's a great movie. Well, it really is. It's absolutely fantastic.
You've got David Cronenberg directing a movie that was written based off a book by Stephen King, starring the amazing Christopher Walken, and I think this is perhaps his most underrated role. This movie is coming up on almost 40 years old, and a lot of people forget about it. A lot of people have forgotten about this movie. Now, this script was written by a guy named Jeffrey Boehm. There's a bit of a story behind the script, and Boehm had written Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. He has written Lethal Weapons 2 and 3. He's written The Lost Boys. So this is a guy who, this guy brings a lot of credibility to the script. But originally, I think Dino De Laurentiis, it got picked up by the De Laurentiis production company, and De Laurentiis, he hated the script for some reason. So he actually brought in Stephen King to write his own adaptation of the screenplay. But then he disliked that also because he said it was just too bloody and graphic. Apparently, King had written a really nasty screenplay, and De Laurentiis didn't like it. And then eventually Cronenberg comes on board and actually takes Boehm's screenplay, but then over 4 lengthy sessions, pares it down essentially into 3 acts. You've got the before and after, before he gets into the car crash, after he gets into the car crash and the fallout from that. You've got the Castle Rock killer, and then you've got the Greg Stilson storyline.
Right.
Which eliminates a lot from the book. Hold on a second. Eric's here. He says, to me, the TV show was just a poor imitation of Quantum Leap.
Very nice. Thank you. That's probably the best quote I've seen about it.
I'm not going to catch it, but okay. What we've got here, I mean, I just think it's a fantastic movie. We have this story about this man played by Christopher Walken, and he plays a guy named, was it Johnny Smith? So that's literally he is portraying the everyman who's a school teacher. He's a school teacher. He's very much in love with this nice girl. They plan to get married. And then all of a sudden, he has this horrific car crash where he is left in a coma for 5 years. He awakens from the coma essentially to find out that the world has kind of moved on without him. The woman has eventually moved on and married another man who she's had a son with. He wakes up just in time to see his mother die. He's got this painful physical therapy and rehabilitation where he needs to learn to walk again. I mean, it's this very painful, story. And I think one of the reasons why it's so damn underrated is because it's so good. You're so tuned into the human aspect of it, you forget that it's a paranormal story. All the things that I've talked about have absolutely nothing to do with supernatural actions.
And that's probably the best way to describe it, because it's not for lack of a better term, because remember, this was also early in Stephen King's career.
Right.
The books he wrote before that, it was Carrie. It was also The Shining at the time. It was Salem's Lot, where even with as scary as it was, there was a subtle nature in the frightening part of it. When it was Carrie, it was the high school girl. It was the same thing with the vampires because they were kind of settled in. And the fact that his name is Johnny Smith, not John Smith, which is Joe Average, you could put yourself into his position when you saw the story and read it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think really what made it work. And to give credit for Christopher Walken, because I have been a fan of Walken many, many times, and people have done parodies of him.
Yeah.
But Christopher Walken is one of those actors, and it's amazing because David Tennant, I was thinking about that from the Doctor Who series, could do it. He wears his paint on his face and his sleeve. And in this show, I mean, yes, we were spoofing the ice is going to break bit.
Yeah.
But the next line after that, he looks at the guy and goes, "Don't you know who I am?" And it's so much pain coming from him. Yeah. And he plays that so well. And it's something that brings you in.
It sets the tone when the movie opens up and he's teaching English composition and he's teaching The Raven by Poe.
Yeah.
And he tells the class that the very next story that they're going to read is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which is about a school teacher that's being haunted by a headless demon. Which is, I think that's a perfect metaphor for what this movie is about. It's about a school teacher who's just haunted by so many demons.
Yeah. Right.
Now we've been going at it for 12, over 10 minutes. We haven't even started to talk about the paranormal aspect of it, which is that he awakens to find out that he has what they describe in the movie as second sight. He becomes like a psychic, and through physical contact with people, he can see maybe into their past. He can see maybe into their future. But he struggles so much with this because I think he's in so much pain that he just wants to be left alone. And it's just that is almost minimized. The supernatural psychic, the psychic ability that he has is sort of overshadowed by how he is sort of slowly withering away throughout the movie every time he uses the power. And every time life just deals him another punch to the kick in the balls.
Yeah.
It's just a kick in the balls after a kick in the butt. And he gets up again, and then life just kicks him right in the balls again. And it's awful. Yeah. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. Now, originally, I don't know if people... Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go with what you were going with. The idea that I was popping up could pop in at any time during the story. So
I don't know if you had known. Yeah, no. It's not a problem. The idea originally, I think, was to cast Bill Murray in the role as Johnny Smith. Now, that's 1983 Bill Murray. So he's coming fresh off Ghostbusters. And to be perfectly honest, in 1983, I wouldn't be able to see it. Now, after, the direction that his career has, the spin that his career has sort of taken, I can totally see Bill Murray, although it would have been so against type for the time, playing, this depressed, isolated, lonely, sort of person. I can totally see it. But in 1983, I would have said, what the hell are you thinking about?
It's not surprising because a lot of comedians, because Bill Murray also at the time was pushing to do serious movies besides comedy. He did the remake also of The Razor's Edge at the time, which was a very serious film if you get a chance to see it, with a bit of humor. A guy who survives an issue during World War I. But in The Stand, too, the original casting before Jack Nicholson was Robin Williams.
That would have been interesting.
Because Robin Williams was into doing that, and they were all for it. But when Jack Nicholson said he was interested, they went with him because he was a bigger name.
Yeah, he
but
pushed everybody else off the table.
But Stephen King was like that, especially for a character named Johnny, because there was also not humor, but some humorous situations. I mean, I walk up to somebody who's seen the movie and have read the book, and if you were sitting there and they said, "What were you doing?" He goes, "Well, we were building furniture."
Yeah,
If you saw the movie,
making
that's when
cabinets.
we were making cabinets. It was a code word for sex. And I'm going, knowing that Bill Murray was doing that, I was going, well, then, yeah, I could see him doing that. Also, to go with Christopher, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I got Eric here. He said he wouldn't have been able to take Murray seriously, especially around Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a decent point. You both have decent points. I just think so few people had seen the other stuff. They were just completely associating him with this sort of, comedic. Yeah, with comedy, with Caddyshack and
meatballs.
It just doesn't matter.
But I mean, Walken was also perfect for the fact because he was everyman at that time. I mean, if you really look at him, he wasn't anywhere near the caricature that people play of him. He was being taken very seriously as an actor, and especially also with the movie too. Everybody else that was cast in it were considered, my father would call them journeyman actors. These were all good character actors or actresses that weren't big, but they could always play the part. And
you've even got Colleen Dewhurst.
That's right.
Even Colleen Dewhurst is in this for 5 minutes.
Martin Sheen does a great job in this. And at that time, Martin Sheen was bouncing back and forth in different type of roles. Tom Skerritt is coming off Alien.
Yeah, he's. Martin Sheen is just coming off a few years off Apocalypse Now.
Yep.
Walken is just coming off The Deer Hunter.
That's right.
He's an Academy Award-winning actor by the time he gets to this. You're right. You've got Tom Skerritt. It's a hell of a cast. Tom Skerritt. Now let's just touch on this for a second because we haven't really talked about it. He does eventually develop psychic abilities.
Right.
Well, he awakes from this where he can develop psychic abilities, and in the first example of it, he is able to save this one nurse's daughter by telling the mother that the house is on fire, but there's still time. And so news spreads of this all over the place, and this is the scene from the movie where he's sort of in the fire and sees the daughter, and news spreads of this all over the place. Where you would normally see that, of course, as being this terribly uncomfortable situation, but because he's become so embittered by the fact that the woman he loves has married another man, there doesn't seem to be anything left for him. It just everything is just a huge pylon. It's right. It's easy to forget that he has all these abilities.
And it's funny. All right.
Herbert Lom was outstanding as the Doctor, playing very much against type coming off from the Pink Panther.
Yep.
That's another example where he actually touches the Doctor and realizes that the Doctor is a Holocaust survivor and that his mother, after 35 years or so, is still alive.
Yeah. Call her. She's still alive.
Yeah.
One of the things in the movie, and they touched on it heavily in the book, but in the movie they kind of touched on it a little. The people who had a problem with his power or wanted him to do the tricks, as it were, were the adults. But people who were affected by his power, which were the children, were thankful. Like a scene they cut from the movie that was in the book. The nurse came in with the daughter when she was saved, and the nurse was in tears and a little freaking out. And the daughter just touched him and said, "Thank you," because she said she saw him. Same thing with the boy. I mean, the joke about the ice is going to break. He was the same way. The adults, though, were the ones that were like, there was the reporter that got cocky and he grabbed his hand and said, "You want to talk about his sister?" Oh my God. And that was a great scene because it made you jump.
Yeah, it was.
without being, boo. It was just like Walken's quick move.
That's the thing. It's such a great script. Again, great performances. Very, very understated. The horror.
Right.
Excuse me. The horror aspect. It's very minimalist. It's very, very, very slight. That whole scene where he grabs that reporter by the arm and says, "You know what? You want to know why your sister killed herself." You know, there's no special effects. There are no practical effects. It's way before CGI. That's just acting.
Acting. It was just good acting and a good script, like we were saying. It was, David Cronenberg, as a director, was also like, yes, he was big with Videodrome and he was big with some shocking things. I mean, even with The Fly with Jeff Goldblum. But even with that, as scary as Jeff Goldblum, when he took off his ear, he just looked at it and put it down. There was no big, boom that came with it.
And
he let the story tell itself and the actors tell the story with it,
Yeah, and again, he very much humanizes Goldblum's character. You just have profound pity for this man that is slowly physically, his teeth are falling out, his ear is falling off. He's ceasing to become a human being. And it's just, at first, it's kind of cool and you think it's going to be a horror movie, but at the same time, very much like this movie, it's a tragedy.
Yeah. I remember when I saw I'm really dating myself. I saw the movie with my sister in the movie theater because we both had finished reading the book.
Okay.
And we were both very impressed how much it was like the book. But at the end, we looked at each other, and it was funny because we were both wiping a tear. And I remember when I read the book, it was the same thing. You felt so sorry for Johnny.
Yeah.
Especially when you realized it could have been you. Yeah. It wasn't like the star football player. It wasn't like, the scientist. It was just your average Joe.
Yeah.
Who suddenly had this ability.
Yeah.
And the way he handled it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
No, the first murder when Tom Skerritt comes to the door.
Well, I don't want to get there yet.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say there is one point in the movie where he achieves just a small moment of happiness, and that's when he runs into, he connects again with this woman that he loves. And just for, I guess for both their sakes, they have sex, which just some, I'm sure, just some sort of contact, and that humanizes him. That brings him back enough where he agrees to help Tom Skerritt, who's looking to catch the Castle Rock killer.
Right.
Which is the second act in the script, which is... It's pretty horrific.
Exactly. And but it's also the same thing. I'm at the end of my rope. I have nowhere else to go to. I'm coming to you. That's the Tom Skerritt's character in this. Yeah. But he knows if there's a chance, can you do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, there's a great scene in the movie where Tom Skerritt calls it the gift, and he said, "You calling it a gift?" And he just lets it all out. What he has to go through.
Yeah.
And again, you see it as a person. The whole closet full of letters that, this person wants me to help. What can I do? This is not a gift.
Everyone's pain, is placed on him.
On him,
he's almost like a Jesus-like character. Like everybody comes to him to, take this away or make this better or explain this to me or why is this happening? And what's happening to him, unfortunately, is that every time he uses this power, I think it's killing him a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
His health is just fading. There's no place, because at one point I think the doctor comes to him and says, we need you in a controlled environment. Come back to the clinic, and he's like,
Right.
I never leave the house.
Right.
I can't go anywhere. I'm already in a controlled environment. You know,
Right.
this is, you know, and this is literally killing me.
Right. And the thing is, he also still, like he said, when he connects with the girl, the woman, I want to help. It's the first thing he says to his dad. I think I'm going to go help them.
Yeah.
Because it makes him human. Also, in the beginning of that movie too, and in the book too was more, but in the beginning of the movie, they were talking about having sex for the first time.
Yeah,
and
they hadn't.
He wasn't feeling well because they hadn't done it. So that was another thing, because she says, I think we should complete the date or something like that, and that's when they do it.
Yeah.
But it makes him human. And that's what I think another reason why people don't remember this, because it's not boogada boogada. You know, The Shining, you had Jack Nicholson going crazy, and you had he was just a normal guy with this power.
Yeah. Yeah, and they don't overplay it.
Right.
And if you remember correctly, at the very beginning, he and, oh God, and I can't remember her name, who plays his Susan, go to an amusement park, and in the middle of it, he starts to have this headache.
Right.
Which is something that he gets, I think, very often, you know, when he's using this power, which he ends up calling the dead zone. And so, you know, filtered through the lens of Herbert Lom, he discovers that, you know, not only can he possibly see the future, but he possesses the ability to alter it. But unfortunately, in the very beginning of the movie, he experiences that, but he can't recognize it for what it is.
Exactly.
You know, which in some way he is able to alter the future. I mean, as opposed to just being, well, I mean, when we start to get into the Greg Stilson character, but I mean, you know, he loses 5 years of his life. So, you know, maybe that precognition was starting to come forward then, but of course it was offset by this horrible thing that he had to go through.
Which,
you know, in the beginning.
In the 1970s, there were books that were written about, like, you know, American psychics and American prophets, and talking about Edgar Cayce. But there were many stories about people who were having, like, a head injury or a serious accident, and they would all of a sudden have these abilities. You know, to, like, have a little psychic, you know, or another one was speaking languages. All of a sudden they could talk to people in all these different languages and such. So, but if you ever saw these people, they were kind of eccentric-y. So, and I think that's why in the thing, because it was always the past, I love the fact that he did the future.
Yeah.
Like, even when the fire was happening at that time. So it wasn't in the future. When the kid saw, or when Johnny saw him break through the water, that was actually the future, because it was a couple hours ahead.
Right.
And I love that his powers progressed as he got weaker. The more they could progress further.
Yeah, and he's able to help people. He ends up catching the Castle Rock killer.
Yes.
Who ends up being the deputy.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember the actor's name off the top of my head, but he was also considered for the role of Johnny Smith. But of course, I think they made the correct decision in going with Walken.
Exactly.
But I mean, and I didn't put her in the overlay, but I mean, Colleen Dewhurst is in this movie for about 5 minutes, and she's just so evil.
Yep.
She's just so evil as the
mother,
the mother of the Castle Rock killer, and he ends up, of course, catching a bullet for it. You know, so every time that he uses this ability to, you know, help someone, it just comes back to bite him.
Exactly.
And, you know, I think he ends up catching like a 357 slug, like right to the gut. He ends up getting a gut shot or something like that. So like every time he tries to help, it's awful.
Exactly.
It's awful. Here she is right here. She's just
there you go.
she's just evil, man. But I mean, you know, again, It's just good acting. It's not.
Mhm.
It's not dependent on horror. It's not.
Mhm.
And to a large extent, I mean, what this movie, as I think about this, what it's about is, he uncovers the evil that are in everyday people.
Exactly.
There's no supernatural force as an antagonist.
What one of my fit when he grabs Colleen Dewhurst's hands and looked at his face and said, "You knew." There wasn't an accusation; it was a genuine surprise. You knew.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you knew and covered it. I mean, he was like even the reader or the sense of the movie watcher going, "Oh my God," like it wasn't like you knew and he was like criticizing her or judging
No.
her. It was that sense
No.
of, and that's what really got it because when he did this to people, like the reporter, he grabbed his hand, he called him a freak. Colleen
Yeah.
Dewhurst called him the devil.
Yeah.
It's, and all he's trying to do is help.
Yeah, it's this guy who's just trying to do the right thing. I mean, if you remember when he sees the latest girl that's been killed by the Castle Rock killer, he recognizes the deputy, but he says to Tom Skerritt, "I watched her and I did nothing."
Yeah.
He's automatically assumed this guilt that somehow he could have prevented this, even though this girl is already dead. So, I mean, you imagine that the experience that he has is that he's actually there as it's happening. He's not watching as some sort of detached, viewer. He's right there, and he says it like 3 times, and Skerritt's like, "What? What are you talking about?"
Which is a great foreshadowing device in the story.
Yeah.
Because when he says, "I couldn't save her, I couldn't stop her," and then when you get to jump a little ahead to the Martin Sheen's character, he can do something, so to speak. It's a foreshadowing of him wanting to. I love that scene. That scene in the gazebo is fantastic.
He's struggling with, I think, I can do this thing, but it comes at a great cost to me. It comes at a great physical cost, at a great emotional cost. My spirit is diminished, every time I do this. But do I continue to, let people suffer?
Do you do the right thing even if it costs you?
Yeah. Which eventually, which leads us to the Stilson character where, and he asks Herbert Lom, if you knew who Hitler was, would you kill him before he came to power? Even though no one would understand what you had done. You would have just killed this guy, and you probably would have gone to prison for murder, or they would have killed you or something like that. And of course, the answer is, I'm a doctor. I've sworn to help people. I've dedicated my whole life to this. So of course I got to shoot the bastard. That's what Herbert Lom tells him.
Line. Oh yeah. Laughed out loud when I read it and laughed out loud when I saw it. I was like, that's a great lie. I shoot the bastard.
Herbert Lom definitely playing against type, coming off all those Blake Edwards movies. As the antagonist against Peter Sellers. So,
but it's
all. Go ahead.
No, but the question of him, do you help? If you have the power and do you help, is the question throughout this whole movie. Like you said, when he helped the first time, he gets shot. There's a scene in the book where he grabs a person's scarf and he realizes the person who owned it drowned in quicksand and his father has to save him because he can't let go of the scarf. And he's, and he goes, do you write and tell him that? And he says, no, because that would just give them pain. He makes these decisions throughout the same thing with the boy. Do you know who I am and everything else? And he grabs the boy and says, you're going to be fine. Yeah. But the other kids died through the ice. There were like 2 or 3 other kids that died in that accident. Yeah. That's when is it enough? If you want to help or
how much are you supposed to give?
Exactly. Which is an interesting story to have in a horror film. Yeah. Because you're not telling it from the point of view of the killer. It's the point of view of the guy who's, trying to stop the killers.
And that is one of the changes that came from the screenplay that is different from the book. I mean, there are parallel stories going on in the book, and I think one of them is the Stilson storyline. You're sort of watching this man advance as he's a traveling salesman. But what the screenplay did under Cronenberg's supervision was tell it strictly from Walken's point of view. You're not seeing it from the point of view, which I think it gets into the book of the Castle Rock Killer. You're not seeing that point of view.
Right.
You're not seeing Stilson's point of view. You're not seeing any of these other things. You're strictly seeing this man slowly being sort of eaten alive by doing the right thing.
By doing the right thing. Yeah. By doing the right thing, and it's killing him.
Yeah. That's just amazing.
Yeah. And it's a spin on the subject.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sometimes if you have somebody with the, Christ, you have the X-Men movies now and everything else and psychic abilities and we must save them and they're righteous, and he's not. Each time he does it, he gets more worn out and more worn, but he'll still keep going. Yeah, and that's what amazing to me.
Yeah, and that's the tragedy of it too. That he's sort of this angry, lonely person that the world has sort of forgotten. I think there's this line from Sleepy Hollow that he quotes as he was a bachelor and in no one's debt. When Ichabod Crane disappears, nobody remembers Ichabod Crane.
Right.
The horseman just runs him down. And you never hear from him again. But I think the last couple of lines of the book is that he's just forgotten about. He wasn't a memorable person. He was a bachelor. He was in no one's debt, so nobody troubled their head about him. And that's the parallel that happens here. Hold on, we got another comment.
He's an average guy.
Yeah, he's doing the greater good even as it kills him. Yeah, and that's the thing. Now, eventually we get to the point with the Stilson character where, doing the greater good is literally going to cost him his life. Because he runs into this man, played fantastic. I think it's a fantastic part for Martin Sheen. Look at that cheesy smile.
That's right.
Who's like this populist running for Senate or Congress or something like that, where he ends up accidentally getting into this like press the flesh kind of moment with him, and he shakes hands only to realize he's actually going to become president of the United States, and he's going to deliberately start a nuclear war because he's fucking insane.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Yeah, the missiles are flying, and you're just like, and so, what do you do? Now he's got to give, maybe the ultimate, he's got to pay maybe the ultimate sacrifice to save the world, and a world that will never recognize what his sacrifice actually was. He'll be written off in history as a crazy person, maybe.
He was that guy who was psychic and then went crazy. He tried to kill him.
Yeah, and tried to shoot that guy.
Tried to shoot that guy. I mean, the first person he asked to go back to it is the doctor.
Yeah, Herbert Lom.
Yeah, who's a healer.
Yeah.
If you knew it, would you do it? Not a cop. He didn't ask, the Tom Skerritt character. He didn't ask an army man. Hell, he didn't even ask his father. But like,
no, he stole his gun, but he didn't ask.
Yeah. Right. He asked, and you knew his father was a hunter, but he was like, he asked the healer, would you do it? Would you break, for lack of a better term, the oath of doing no harm, the Hippocratic Oath even. I mean, if you want to go that far with it. And I think that's what made it work, to me anyway, because that's the one thing I liked about it. You can see the Jewish thing. Here you go.
King's always good having his own shared universe of characters. Tom Skerritt's, because it's Castle Rock. Castle Rock is his stomping ground. Tom Skerritt's character returns in Cujo, and it doesn't end well for him. Yeah, and I think that this was coming off the failure of Cujo, actually, as a movie. I think that movie was released first, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Actually, I'm going to disagree with you. I think it was the opposite, but I could be wrong too on that.
But, okay. Yeah. It's not a point I would debate.
And I think there's like 6 to 7 books where Castle Rock, if it's not mentioned, it's the main place where like it
Yeah.
was.
No, I think it happens in Derry.
Derry,
It's
but
close
there
to
was a
Castle
thing
Rock.
there where they were connected to Castle Rock
Yeah.
in the book.
Yeah, it's his universe.
Needful Things, which was a book and a movie starring Ed Harris, where the devil comes.
That's Von Sydow.
Yeah. But that was they even announced it on the book, the last story of Castle Rock.
Okay.
I mean, that's the production company with like did Seinfeld and The Body or Stand By Me, which was The Body, which was also based in Castle Rock.
Oh, was it?
Stephen
Okay.
King, okay. Yeah, Stephen King and Rob Reiner and somebody else started a production company and they called it Castle Rock. After that, because he said he had no intention of doing it. He just liked the sheriff's character in the book, and he said, I want to do something like that, and tied him in with Cujo. But there's like about a good 7 or 8 books that, if it's not directly in Castle Rock, there's a connection to Castle Rock in it. Like there's a chapter or two. Because as Stephen King said, he created a town that was like the focal point of evil, so to speak.
Well, yeah, he certainly succeeded with that. I think one of the philosophical questions he asked, as it pertains to the Dead Zone, is political assassination ever justified?
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's another. Yeah, that's something that happens here, and clearly he takes the shot to try to kill, which he fails. He ends up losing his own life.
Exactly.
But through a twist, what ends up happening, he reveals Martin Sheen to be who he really is.
Exactly.
Which is a coward and a monster.
Mm-hmm.
So he ends up ruining his political career, and he derails that particular timeline at the cost of his own life in a story that no one's ever going to understand. He doesn't explain it in the letter to Susan. He doesn't explain it at all. The only person who might have a chance of understanding is the doctor, but I don't think he ever gets into it with him either.
And what's the last thing in the movie that Johnny says to Susan?
I love you, isn't it?
Yeah, he's safe. Your son will be safe.
Yeah.
He tells, the future generations, they're going to be safe now. And that's all he wanted to do. He, is the ultimate sacrifice to do the ultimate saving, so to speak, and no one will know. Just like any good superhero.
A minimalist nod to the paranormal. I wouldn't even say the supernatural. It's more like the paranormal, and completely human villains. The monsters are human beings. Between the Castle Rock Killer and Stilson, the
monsters are us.
Yeah, the monsters are us, and it's just. I think that's the reason why this movie doesn't get its due. As opposed to The Shining, as opposed to Salem's Lot, as opposed to whatever. It's much more along the lines of the Shawshank Redemption, where the evil are the evil characters are the people, the wardens, the guards, these sorts of things.
And even the father of the boy he was tutoring was not the most honorable man. He wasn't like, he was kind of, he was very business oriented, very new. Like, what does he say about the Stilson character? He said he's crazy, so you got to keep your distance, but he could win, so you got to keep him close. So he knew the evil was willing to swim with this shark.
Yeah, so he wasn't standing on any moral principle there.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. He was ready to make his deal with the devil if he had to keep himself afloat. So, a lot of the characters that he interacts with are compromised, which probably doesn't, that's not helping Walken either, because I think he recognizes that even in that father.
If you notice, because also when the father talks to him about it, he says, well, let me beat the boy.
Yeah.
When he meets the boy, that's when he wants to help him.
Yeah.
When he was talking with the father, he was kind of like yes or no, but that was and he knew who the innocent ones were. The girl was in the fire. The boy could have gone through the ice. The baby, I I mean, I know I'm really stretching to draw those coalitions, but it's the innocent ones.
Yeah,
he was protecting the most, or trying to protect the most.
Yeah. The malevolent reporter, no. The Castle Rock killer, no. Clearly, Stilson, no. You've got varying degrees. They're not but yeah, not
even
good people.
Even calling Dewhurst being the mother.
Yeah, the enabler of a serial killer who's been killing women with a pair of scissors, one a year for I don't know how many years. And Eric says, the monsters are us. Perfectly said. This film, Misery. Yeah, Misery is another one.
Yeah. Oh,
Misery is another one. There's there was a Broadway production of that for a very long time that I never got around to seeing, with Bruce Willis in the role as the writer, and Laurie Metcalf was playing Annie Wilkes. And I wanted to see that so badly. And just around the time that I found out about it, I ended up leaving. And then, of course, I didn't come back for 10 years. So, that was a bit of a trade.
I know Laurie Metcalf was nominated for a Tony Award for it, playing that part. Yeah. Bruce Willis wasn't, but Bruce Willis actually said she scared the hell out of him every night.
I believe it. She's swinging a sledgehammer at me. The hell with that. We've got to get into Misery at some point, because
there's several King books that are out that, to study and examine in this, especially the ones, Carrie, even the first one that Brian De Palma did, with Sissy Spacek and everything else, a high school kid.
Yeah, John Travolta.
My favorite quote with Stephen King was that he went into a movie theater in Bakersfield, California, and it was an all black audience. Him and his wife are the only Caucasian people in the room, and they thought they were seeing a Red Fox film called Norman, Is That You? And it was the wrong film. And he said, they're not going to get this, they're not going to like this, they're not going to. And at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, it's the end of the movie, when a hand came out of the grave, the whole movie theater screamed and somebody, oh, that girl's fucked. That girl is, and Stephen King talked about he wasn't expecting that, but that encouraged him to keep writing that type of horror. Because it seems to hit everybody.
Yeah,
that's the other thing about this story. The character of Johnny, you could be reading this or watching this and could put yourself in those shoes. He wasn't a strong man. He was physically weak. He wasn't like Chris Evans in Captain America. He's
a school teacher. He's Ichabod Crane.
Exactly.
He's Ichabod Crane.
And a side note, he talks about reading Ichabod Crane, and he winds up playing the Headless Horseman later on, Christopher Walken. Yeah. And I have the best copy of The Raven being read by Christopher Walken.
The movie starts out where he's reading it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never seen with him reading it. Because when I saw them, I'd love to see Laurie Metcalf as Annie Will. They discussed about remaking it for like Netflix movie.
I bet you could find a copy on YouTube.
Why? Kathy Bates did a great time. Check the New York Public Library.
Yeah.
Check the New York Public Library too, because they record Broadway shows like that.
Yeah, somebody's recorded that. It's out there. Yeah.
It's got to be. Because I'm trying to remember who played the sheriff. Yes.
In what? In Misery?
Pet Sematary is my favorite book.
I'm not a huge Pet Sematary fan. If I did that, it probably would be on the one string you probably wouldn't appreciate, Eric. You might not want to catch that show. I don't know. I'm not a huge one. I'm not a huge Pet Sematary fan.
It was a scary book too. I remember reading it.
It was very scary. Yeah, it was a very scary book. Yeah, but I think I have a copy in the living room somewhere. Yeah, it never. And that second one with that remake was just ugh. So.
And I was hoping it would be good because of John Lithgow. I could watch John Lithgow read a phone book.
Yeah, sometime. Pretty much.
John Lithgow is probably he's probably one of the most underrated horror performers. He did Blowout, which was suspense. He did another movie where he played like 7 different characters because he was a guy. I'm trying to remember the movie. It was a mid-'80s, early '90s.
Was it Raising Cain?
Yeah, Raising Cain. Yeah, Raising Cain. That movie was creepy as hell.
He was a villain in
John Lithgow just has that delivery.
He was a villain in Denzel Washington, an early Denzel Washington movie, which was really good. He was in that movie Cliffhanger with Stallone. He was a villain. He plays a great villain.
And of course, don't forget, what was that? I can't remember that movie in the '80s that was trying to be like a science fiction movie with Peter Weller. He was a rock band. No, rock band and a test pilot and not Remo Williams. I can't remember it. I got to look it up. I'm sorry, folks. Didn't mean to waste your time, but it was, the adventure continues. It's like he's a scientist who's also a rock star. His band might have been
Remo Williams.
No, Remo Williams was a completely that's another movie. But it was like evil, pure and evil from the fifth dimension. It was one of the quotes from it. But
now,
John Lithgow's the
definitely
villain.
Not going to watch it. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I went way off track.
Lithgow was amazing in season 4 of Dexter. Buckaroo Banzai.
Thank you.
Okay.
Could not remember to save my life.
All right, both of you stop right now. Good grief.
Okay.
Here's a point. Eric wants to come on with the panel, so I'll have to get him on with you guys, and we'll all do a show together. We have to figure out a movie, and then we'll get there. And he's not sweating my Pet Sematary critique, which it actually is on the list, but I've got some other things coming up for that, and I'll get into that.
What do you have coming up, Michael? What's next on the agenda?
Well, tomorrow I have my buddy Doug and I are coming on to do The Devil's Candy, which is a hardcore fucking horror movie, if there ever was one, with Ethan Embry of all people. The last person you'd ever expect to see in a horror movie. And it comes off that IFC Midnight production.
Serious?
And it's just a serious movie, haunted house and demonic possession. And it's amazing. I can't wait to cover that tomorrow. I don't know. What is coming up? Hold on a second. Oh, that's right. Something Shitty This Way Comes makes its triumphant return. That'll be it for the week. But next week, we've got Something Shitty This Way Comes as I tackle single-handedly, because I don't want to do a pile-on. I can do all the piling on myself. The Phantom Menace.
Oh, you're a brave man, Michael.
I'm shredding right into the most sacred of cows. And I'm going to have steak and hamburger and liver and Then on Wednesday. What?
Dude, you could do 20 minutes on Jar Jar Binks alone.
I don't plan. Yeah.
You don't have to. Please don't.
I'm doing 1 through 3 for the next 3 Mondays. I'm doing that, then Attack of the Clones, and then I'm doing Revenge of the Sith the Monday afterward. But next week we've got The Phantom Menace on Monday. I've got The Devil's Rejects. One of the ones that he covered with Bill Bengal. Bill's going to be here. And then I'm bringing on a new guest, Jocelyn Jeffries, who is the daughter of a friend of mine from high school, who's very much into film and theater production. And we're going to do something a little different. We're going to cover Big Fish.
Great movie.
I love that movie. And, when someone I was talking to her mother, and she's like, she wants to be on your show. Is that possible? I'm like, yeah. But then I'm thinking, well, what am I going to cover with, my buddy's daughter, who's like a senior in high school? So I came up with like a short list of movies, which was like, I think it was The Mummy with Brendan Fraser. I think I said we could do Lord of the Flies. I think we could do Terminator 3. And then I said Big Fish. And she said, Big Fish. She's like, Big Fish isn't a horror movie. I said, I'm just looking, and what I'm always looking for on this show, unless you're on the Something Shitty subthread.
It also has a werewolf.
Yeah, and I'm looking for intelligent films.
I'll give you.
I'm not a Burton fan, but
it was the only movie he was never nominated for an Oscar. Was Big Fish for directing.
I'm not a Burton fan, but I love that movie. It's my favorite, one of my favorite movies. Actually, I don't watch it very often because I don't want to get used to it.
You know me as well as you have. You know how many years that we've known each other.
Yeah.
I took 2 nephews of mine to see that movie because at the time my mother was ill, and it was getting to the point that we knew. And I said, "Come on, let's go." And they said, well, "Let's go see." And we went and saw it. And my one nephew, who was my godson, gave me a hug at the end of the movie. And I'm like, "Oh, did you like it?" And he goes, "Oh my God, Uncle John, it's you." And I went, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "The Albert Finney character. That's you." And I went, "Oh." So every time I hear Big Fish, I'm like, "Oh, my biography." Okay.
Well, there you go.
It's a great selection. That's
isn't
a great
it?
movie to talk about.
I think so. I'm looking forward to that a lot. Hold on. Eric says, I listened to a podcast about the Devil's Candy. Haven't seen it, but holy shit. Yeah, man, it's on Hulu. In fact, it's probably as soon as I get off here, I got to go back and finish the screening. It's only 80 minutes. It's a very brief, it's not a lengthy movie, part of that IFC, but it is intense as fuck. So I'm looking forward to that. Going to cover that tomorrow. Dan, I hope you're talking about the Devil's Candy and not the Phantom Menace. I think you are, Dan. I'm gonna take that. That you're not talking about the Phantom Menace. Yeah, he's talking about the Devil's Candy because he's got the horns up. So yeah, I know exactly what he's talking about. It is a great film. Oh, dude, you know my love of Devil's Rejects. The first time I saw your show, man. The Two Bearded Losers. You guys were going at it about Devil's Rejects, and I absolutely love Big Fish. Yeah. Tim Burton's last truly great film. Yeah, before he started just, I don't know what he's doing, but whatever. I think
if you're taking on the first 3 Star Wars films for Something Shitty This Way Comes, please make sure you have a physician off screen in case you need it. Okay.
Okay.
That scares the hell out of me, man.
Bad. It's just bad. And fortunately,
go ahead. No,
I was going to say, fortunately, I have
the trash movies.
Oh yeah, they're just. I have Disney, so I can watch them. It's just some of these movies are actually painful to screen. So that's
a gentleman you and I both know turned around and said, it's pretty bad when the most fulfilled and depth character is the CGI of Yoda.
Well, that was part of Rob Zombie's argument. He said he saw it. He was on Joe Rogan, and he was doing press for the 3 from Hell, and he said he was watching it, and he said he couldn't figure out why Liam Neeson couldn't act. He's like, this is Oscar Schindler. What's the problem? What is going? He said he didn't understand CGI very much back then. But he said, what he didn't realize at the time was that Liam Neeson wasn't trained to speak to a tennis ball.
Right.
Exactly. That's a different thing.
Exactly it.
Yeah, he said in 94, he said to this day, the best example he's seen of CGI is Forrest Gump. Because he said he watched it and he's like, wow, Zemeckis found an actor with no legs who can really fucking act. He didn't know who Gary Sinise was at the time. But, just as a minimalist sort of support system and not the entire program. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot to cover there. Hold on.
My mother said the same thing when she saw Forrest Gump. She said, where did they find this guy? And then I'm like, no, Mom, it's... And that kind of blew her away and made her disappointed because she goes, "Oh, I thought it was a guy in a wheelchair that was that good."
Yes. So he's talking to JFK and all that, but that won't be happening in the Phantom Menace. So before I turn my stomach too much, I think this is a good place to end. We'll be here tomorrow night, 7:00 to cover the Devil's Candy. So tune in. If you see this video on the replay, please consider subscribing to the channel. John, thank you again.
And feel free to bitch me out for being late. Anybody wants to do it on the replay. Dude, I'm sorry. I heard your call, and I'm like, what the hell is it? And I looked up and went, oh, Christ. I literally was asleep at the computer.
Dude, it's no big deal. Go get some real rest. Take care, everybody, and See you soon.
Be well, folks. Be well.